football show on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch every live Premier League game this season on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play for my country again.
Do it then.
What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
Thursday night's football show. Richie McCormack here with you on the eve of a new Premier League season. It all gets underway tomorrow night at Selhurst Park. It's Patrick Vieira leading Crystal Palace against his former side Arsenal. It's going to be an 8 p.m. start to that one, and we will look ahead to the games that are to come this weekend, and indeed to the summer's business done by the big players in the Premier League with John Giles momentarily. Just to bring you up to date on everything else going on, one of course non-football line, and I suppose the main sporting line of the night being Derek Lyng appointed as the new Kilkenny senior hurling manager on a 3-year term to succeed Brian Cody. But in Europe, Shamrock Rovers, with 4 minutes played in Tallaght Stadium in the second half of their Europa League qualifier, the third round qualifier against Skopje of North Macedonia. Rovers leading by 2-0. A Graham Burke penalty and a Dylan Watts goal in 29 minutes. The difference between the sides there. Earlier on, a fantastic result for St Patrick's Athletic, winning 1-0 away to CSK Sofia in the third qualifying round of the Conference League. Serge Akatai with that goal for them in the closing stages of that game after coming on as a late substitute for Billy King. Not so good for Sligo Rovers, beaten 5-1 tonight away to Viking. A David Cawley penalty, the consolation for them. They will meet back at the Showgrounds next Thursday. Fantastic picture tweeted out tonight as well by Rory Houston. I saw there of the hundreds watching on the match on a big screen in Sligo town, just praying for a goal, he says, at the time, and it came in the end, a minute from time, from David Cawley. But a 5-1 reversal for Sligo Rovers away to Viking tonight. Great night for the Dublin sides so far, at least. The former manager of one of those joins us on the line now to look ahead to the new Premier League season. John Giles, good evening to you.
Evening, Richie.
How do you feel on the eve of a new Premier League season, John? Are you excited? Are you looking forward to everything getting ramped up and kicking off again?
Yeah, looking forward to it, Richie. It doesn't seem we've had much of a break.
It never does. It never does.
Yeah. And then we're going to have the World Cup in between as well. So it's going to be a fairly hectic season. Yeah, at least
it's going to be a bit mad, not least of which, as you mentioned, because we've got the small matter of a World Cup plonked in the middle of it. So the handbrake goes on in the middle of the winter, and then we'll start again on the other side of Christmas in the new year. But in between, I mean, we've got a fascinating title race in prospect again. It looks like the main players are going to be pretty much the main players once more. Liverpool and Manchester City look like they're going to take some beating, and then it's going to be a race for the top four. But some intriguing subplots, to say the least, going on pretty much at every other club that's been doing business so far in the transfer window. Just to bring you through, say, who Liverpool have brought in during this close season. Of course, they signed Darwin Núñez from Benfica for close on €80 million. They also signed Fabio Carvalho from Fulham, the young teenager who rose to prominence in the Championship for Fulham last season. And then the replacement right back for Trent Alexander-Arnold is now Kalvin Ramsey, who they bought from Aberdeen, whereas they lost the likes of Sadio Mane and Takumi Minamino and several other young players that went out. Whereas Manchester City, for their part, they brought in Erling Haaland from Borussia Dortmund and Calvin Phillips were their two main signings. Let go of a lot of players, did City, for a lot of big money as well. They kind of evened out the books, if not better than that. Alexander Zinchenko and Gabriel Jesus both left for Arsenal. Raheem Sterling's gone to Chelsea for nearly £50 million, and several other youngsters as well. Assessing the business done by those two, first of all, John, who do you think has come away from the transfer market? And granted, there's still a few days to go in it. I think they've shut up shop in terms of business and any big business that they might do. How do you assess how Liverpool and Manchester City have done on the face of things? Because all we have to go off in terms of evidence so far is the Charity Shield.
I think they've recruited well, both of them. We've got... Well, Liverpool got Salah to sign a contract, which is a big one. I would say Liverpool, I think, have come off best. Richie.
Why do you reckon, John?
Well, first of all, I think they were more solid than Manchester City. I mean, City have got Phillips, as we know, and Haaland. I think Haaland will be a huge success for them, Richie. I wouldn't be so sure about the Phillips situation because they've got Rodri there as well, and I think they're very, very similar to each other in the playing in the middle of the field. You know, Bernardo Silva is the best of them for getting hold of the ball and dominating in the middle of the field. But I think Liverpool already have that in the middle of the field with the players they have. I think with getting the new player coming in, what's his name? Nunez,
yeah.
was it?
Nunez.
Yeah. Nunez. Salah is still there. Jota, Firmino, Kalvin. I think they've recruited slightly better than Manchester City have. But I think it'll be between the two of them. But if I was putting money on it now, for the league, for example, I think I would put it on Liverpool.
Okay. It's interesting that both of them have signed centre forwards, and kind of old school centre forwards, in the sense that we haven't really seen much in the game over the last few years. Like, they're proper, I guess in modern parlance they call them number 9s, whereas they're focal points for their attack. Whereas City, obviously enough in the last few years, 5-6 years under Pep, would have had this, almost like a front 6, whereas goals can kind of come from anywhere. And Liverpool would have been the same. Their front 3 is their front 3, and it's been you could have reeled it off for game after game after game over the last 4 years, 5 years. It was Mane, Salah and Firmino. Now Diogo Jota's come in and kind of upset the apple cart a little bit on that, but now they have 2 centre forwards each of them. Manchester City have Erling Haaland, Liverpool have Darwin Nunez, and you would think on the face of things, John, that it might slightly alter the way both teams play.
Well, it could well do. I mean, they didn't have an out-and-out centre forward, as you know, last year, Manchester City. And funny enough, they've had an amazing league last year, City. They actually scored, I think, 4 or 5 goals more than Liverpool.
Yeah.
Without a recognised centre forward, which was amazing. So, like, Haaland will score goals for them, Richie, but I just wondered if they're going to do it as well in the middle of the field, or some of the forwards. I mean, Grealish hasn't hit it off, really. Mahrez, maybe. But they're both playing as wingers, and I don't see them taking players on, particularly Grealish. He hasn't. He wasn't a winger for Villa.
Yeah.
I mean, he was more a left-sided midfield player. And what I see them playing City, when they get into certain positions where Grealish, for example, should be taking players off, he stops, passes it back, and they start all over again. I think Liverpool are more dangerous now this season than they were last season with the signings they've made.
Is that a lack of confidence from Grealish? Is that a kind of... He doesn't seem like somebody who lacks in confidence, but when you become a £100 million player and there's suddenly the expectation, you're not the young local lad anymore, you're a big signing for somebody else in a strange part of the country, you suddenly, does that kind of burden players, and that can burden players in a sense?
Well, I think what happened to him, they paid $100 million for him, but at Villa. But when he played at Villa, Richie, he played as a left-sided midfield player. He didn't play as a winger. Like, wingers have a different job to do altogether. When the ball comes out, played up to them, they've got to be beating the fullback and that. But he wasn't doing that at Villa. He was playing as left-side midfield player. So I do feel a little bit sorry for him to be put into a position where he's expected to be a £100 million player, and it's not his normal position. That's the way I see it with Grealish. But anyway, that's the way I think he's going to be playing again. And I don't think he's really done it for him. And if he plays in the left wing again, I don't think he's going to do it for next season. And then they're going to depend on De Bruyne a lot. Whether, like, De Bruyne finished the season well, Richie.
Very well, yeah.
But he didn't have a good season. I saw him last week in the last match against Liverpool, and he's getting on to his teammates and that, and I don't like that anyway. I think he's a terrifically gifted player, but he's a moody individual. On his day, he's brilliant. But I hate talking about players on their day. But anyway, we'll wait and see how he does. Amara's on the right side, whether he's going to be able to take players on as well. They have Foden to come in. I think he'll come into the team and play much more matches. And Bernardo Silva is a terrific player. So it's going to be fascinating to see with the new signings how they're going to do, and Liverpool with their new signings. But I think Liverpool are more solid week in and week out than City are likely to be. Now, I'm only guessing now, Richie, and that's what I would think. If I was putting money on it, I would put money on Liverpool to overtake City, especially in the league.
I'm curious about the World Cup element, because obviously enough, every other World Cup we've had, it's, you know, a long season and a 38 or, you know, 42 game slog, whatever it happens to be, heading into a World Cup, and you either impress throughout the season or you don't. This time around, it seems like from and you know, not just an English perspective, this is everybody, like there's a narrow window in which to impress your national team manager if you're on the fringes and if you're not necessarily central to his thinking. And Jack Grealish kind of fits into that category, whereby, you know, maybe he did look like he would be the player under Gareth Southgate, and now he's kind of drifted out of the reckoning a little bit, and people like Phil Foden have superseded him in an international capacity. And it's a real make or break. What were you now, in August? So it's a real make or break 3 months, essentially, that you really have to put the hammer down and perform well in these first 3 months of the season if you're going to go to a World Cup, if you're one of those players who's on the fringes.
Well, I think it's crazy stuff, Richie. I mean, how did they get that place for a World Cup? When you think of all the places in the world that you can get a World Cup. I mean, England, for example, haven't had a World Cup since 1966. You got Italy, you got Spain, you got Germany. You've got all these big places. So you'd wonder, they have to split the season, as you quite rightly say there. It's just madness. It's madness. I mean, the players are going to be playing up to that, through that, and then beyond that, with a big break in the season. I mean, how did it get to that stage where the World Cup is in that country?
There's books and documentaries and all that kind of stuff to be written about how Qatar got FIFA to get them on side. But just in terms of having to perform in that much of a burst, knowing that you have that's such small a time frame to try and get yourself into an international manager's thinking, it's got to play on certain players' minds, you'd think.
Well, it's bound to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's no good for anybody, you know, whether it be for the English team or in the international teams, for the players themselves. I mean, there's going to be a very, very long season with loads and loads of matches where you're going to get loads and loads of injuries. You're bound to. You know, I think Liverpool have a big squad of players, so Manchester City, but they're going to need them. And as you say, for the England lads to get into it, like if they have a bad start to the season, there's a good chance they won't get into the squad. But all the countries are going to have that problem.
Yeah, your Belgians, your Germans, whoever else is going to have the same issue throughout the course of Europe and indeed beyond. But like, you can't really. This is a league now where you presume you don't know what's going to come in the second half of the season because you don't know what you're going to have in terms of who's coming back from a World Cup and who's not. So
well, exactly, Richie. I mean, there's going to be injuries, that's for sure. But
you can't afford if you're a club that's looking to challenge for anything, whether it's a top 4 place, whether it's a title, whether it's to avoid relegation, you can't really afford a slow start this season.
Oh no, they can't. Well, with Liverpool and Manchester City, even last season, they're neck and neck, you know. But what's happened as well within the Premiership? I mean, there's an awful lot of foreign players playing in the Premiership now that will be playing. Their top players to be playing in the World Cup for whether it be Spain or Germany or whatever country they come from. So I think the Premier League will suffer more than anybody else. In the long season that we're going to have when it comes to Europe matches after the World Cup.
Yeah, the dynamic of it is very, very strange altogether. On Kalvin Phillips, I mean, as we mentioned, one of the senior players to leave Manchester City this summer. I guess one of the least heralded ones would be Fernandinho, because he's been there for so long and kind of was one of those players who kind of quietly did their job and sat in front of the defence and cleaned things up and mopped things up. To be the guy who's suddenly replacing him, who's been there for a decade and he's cost 50 million quid coming in from Leeds. I mean, you would have seen a lot of Kalvin Phillips down through the last 4 or 5 years for Leeds, John. Is he able to kind of step into that role, do you reckon? I know you mentioned he's a similar player to Rodri, but does he have the ability to make that step up to a team like Manchester City?
I think he has. I wouldn't depend on him getting on the ball and spread. Although I think he has the ability to spread the ball around. But he seemed to be told at Leeds, this is the position you're playing in. And for England, you know, I don't see him getting on the ball and really creating in the way that I think he has the ability to do. And then you've got Rodri, who is very similar in that way, Richie. He doesn't get on the ball much. You know, he's more or less a defensive midfield or holding midfield, as they say. And to be honest, I don't think Phillips has, unless Pep gets it out of him, the ability to get on the ball and spray the ball around and create and indeed scored a few goals himself. You know, like when he was playing in midfield for Leeds, I think he was told, this is what you've got to do. You're the holding midfield player. Because if you look at his goal-scoring record, it's not very good. It's not very good for England. And as a midfield player, he should be scoring goals. And neither does Rodri. So I can't see the two of them playing in the middle field for Manchester City.
Yeah, it could be a case of, I mean, that's accounting for the need for squad depth. You could have one week in, 1 week off.
Well, they could do that.
Yeah.
But if you're paying that much money for a player of 50 million, you know, if you have another player similar to them, because really you don't need two players of that calibre playing in the position in the middle of the field. So you'd sort of have to rest every second week, Richie. You know, and that shouldn't be the case. I mean, when you get out there, the midfield players for Manchester City, they should be able to attack, they should be able to defend as well and score goals. That's what midfield players should be able to do. So I haven't seen it yet from Phillips. Although what he does for Leeds, he did well. What he does for England, he does well. But he's not playing as a midfield player and have the expectation to do more than he does. Unless Guardiola gets that from him. He hasn't got it from Rodri. Rodri is a player that plastered from A to B. But he doesn't score many goals. He doesn't create many goals. Yeah. So you could have two players very, very similar to each other. That's the only way I can see it. Unless Guardiola wants Phillips to play in a more forward position.
One of the areas that Liverpool have kind of been questioned over, particularly by their own fans actually during the course of this summer, John, is their midfield. People have been wondering perhaps why they didn't add to that midfield in a really meaningful sense. I know Fabio Carvalho can play there a little bit, but you look at the age profile that's there already. Thiago is 31, James Milner is 36 now, and Jordan Henderson is 32. Now granted, you do have the likes of Fabinho's still only 28, Naby Keita is still only 27, but there is a sense that maybe you haven't seen the best of Keita so far, and then you're into the likes of Harvey Elliott, who's 19. Did they need, in your opinion, John, a little bit of something extra in midfield, or if you're Jurgen Klopp, are you happy enough with the tools that you have there in the centre of the park?
I think I'd be reasonably happy with them, Richie, to be honest. There's another young lad there playing. What's the other midfield lad?
There's Curtis Jones and Harvey Elliott would be the two younger lads.
Jones is a bit older, but I think he could play in the first team.
Yeah.
With all the players they have around them, do you know what I mean? Like as we can see over the years, the front three or four, whoever's playing, they're really, really good. And you know, they might sign somebody, but I think they could put at least one of those young lads in the midfield to go with the experienced players. I mean, I know they're a bit older, but they're still very fit, and I haven't seen them struggle in any way, whether it be Henderson or Thiago. Or they finished the season very, very strongly in those positions. And you never know. I wouldn't be surprised if Liverpool bought somebody else in the middle field. In other words, if they get whatever they want in that position, I think they have the money to do it, and I think that they definitely have the resources. But I still think with the players that they have, although you've mentioned their age, they're still good enough to still play. Yeah.
James Milner in particular is like one of these freaks who's like I think he's probably the fittest person at the club still, and he's 36 years of age. It's unbelievable.
He's amazing. I mean, all those players that you mentioned, they don't look their age at all. You know, they're well able to do their stuff, and they've got really good players around them. You know, you got Van Dijk around him. The other lad they brought in, the centre half, I can't think of his name, a really top class player, Alexander, and the left back Robertson.
Konate's in there, and Robertson's on the left, and pretty much everywhere in every position.
Squad. I think they've got a big, very, very balanced squad. Liverpool, definitely.
Speaking of balance or lack thereof, I want to touch on Manchester United with you as well, John, because obviously they've got a new manager in Eric Ten Hag, and the perception would be is that they want to close the gap on the top two. That looks like, you know, it's still going to be a long ways off given how they finished last season. They were on 58 points, 93, it's like 30 odd points behind the top two. It's a lot. Like, that's a hell of a gap to bridge, and they're not helped by the fact that they have their best known player is 37 and seemingly wants out. What have you made of the Cristiano Ronaldo saga as it's become this summer, John? Because it certainly looks like he wants to leave. United are making noises that they don't want him to leave, but surely it would benefit all parties if he wasn't there anymore.
Well, it's a very, very difficult job for the new manager coming in, Richie. There's no doubt about that, and it will take time. If he is what Manchester United hope he'll be, then he's got to get a grip of it, and there'll be a lot of problems. And Ronaldo being the biggest. I mean, my take on it is that Ronaldo wants to get away, and what's happening now in the game, he has his agent, and it looks like to me that the agent has done a deal with somebody, and he's been told, listen, you've got to get away. And what Manchester United are saying, well, we don't want you to go. You've got another contract, quite rightly. But he's doing all sorts. I mean, he left, didn't he, when he was subbed last week? He left before the end of the match and all that. So he's doing the best he can to get away. But I'd say the agent has a deal set up, and Manchester United are not playing the role from his point of view, which is to get away. So I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, he has a contract with Manchester United. The new manager saying, no, I want him in the team. I can't see how that's going to happen. But I think the manager is trying to show anyway, I'm not going to be set on by any player, whether it be Ronaldo or anybody else. I'm the boss. I don't want him to go, so he's not going.
There hasn't been either.
Ronaldo's doing his best to get away.
Yeah,
but it'll take time for the any manager to come in. If you go back to Ferguson's time, I mean, Ferguson took 2 or 3 years.
He took 4 years
before he got it going.
Yeah. I'm guessing from your viewpoint, it would be harsh to judge Ten Hag until he's gotten his feet wet properly in this gig. He need to be there for a year or more before he can properly, accurately assess how he's doing, because the last thing they want to do is now involve themselves in a series of knee-jerk reactions and, getting rid of the manager as soon as there's any hint of trouble. You want to sense that this is the guy for the next few years, and you want to give him time to actually make his own stamp on the team, I guess.
Oh, there's no doubt. And it'll take a bit of time. It's like he's got the Ronaldo problem is a big problem on its own, and then he's got to get the players in that he wants to get in. And that hasn't happened yet. I think he's only made 2 or 3 signings. But I think he knows what he wants. Like all good managers, they know what they want, and then put his stamp on it. But it will take time, Richard. There's no doubt about that. I mean, the Ronaldo situation is going to take a bit of time, and I can't see any future there for the manager having any sort of a relationship with Ronaldo, and that's it. But I think he has players in mind that he wants to get in, and he hasn't got them in just yet. But I think he'll be backed by the club to get in the players he wants.
Yeah.
So it definitely has to be a season where it's change and a lot of changes for the new manager and patience.
What would constitute a good season for them then, John?
Well, they've been trying to get into a Champions League position would be fantastic for them.
Yeah.
Right? But it could be 5th, could be 6th, could be 7th position that you could have, but you could see the progress. You could see the actual. He's put his stamp on that, and that's going to get better. Not so much this season. I wouldn't be looking out for too much this season.
Yeah.
But I'd be looking out at the end of the season. If they finish in 4th place, it'd be fantastic for them. But you could see that there's something happening. It's getting better, and it can only get better with time. It's like at Spurs.
Yeah.
He took over a bad position, Conte, but he's made a huge job of it up to the end of the season. Do you know what I mean?
They've improved immeasurably under
immeasurably,
Conte. Yeah.
Over a quick period of time. I mean, he's a terrific manager, there's no doubt, and he's got a couple of. He's got Richarlison in from Everton. I've never been a big fan of his, but he's got him in, and a few more players that I have never heard of that's come in. But that's what he did. He got 4 players in during the year, and they've been very, very good.
Yeah, there hasn't been a dud, I don't think, under Conte just yet.
No.
I think a lot of people were a little bit worried maybe that those players that he brought in from Juventus last season perhaps weren't the exact players that he wanted at the time. But Kulusevski in particular and Bentancur certainly worked. Christian Romero was brought in before that, I know, but he's worked at the back. And now you add on top of that Richarlison, who makes that front two suddenly look like a really potent front three, because you've got Son on the left, you'll have him on the right, you presume, and then Harry Kane through the middle. Yves Bissouma is really highly rated, having come in from Brighton, and even Perisic as almost under the radar, but like the calibre that he has behind him, playing under Conte at Inter, before that playing for Bayern, I think, wasn't it? And he played for Borussia Dortmund as well. Like these are guys that know how to get it done. Yeah,
and he knows the players. I think what's happened to the previous managers there with the boss there, what wasn't allowing them to manage in a way of getting the players in. I think Conte said, "Look, I'm not joining this club unless I'm allowed to do what I want to do," and I think he's allowed them to do it, and that's been a big change in what's been happening at Spurs.
Go on ahead.
Yeah, he's got in the players that he wants, you know, and that's 90% of the job. And he hasn't spent an awful lot of money, really. You know, he obviously knows players, especially from Italy and on the continent, that we never heard of. And he said he got those 4 players in, and they really did their stuff. So he could be one of the teams that challenge for the league. Now, I don't expect him to do, but he's in there. He's improved that Spurs side no end, and he's been allowed to do it. And I think they can only get better. They'll be a very, very difficult team to beat, that's for sure.
Okay, that's interesting. Football, the football show even is brought to you by Sky. Get all the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. John, you're going to stick with us. We're going to talk about perhaps teams that might struggle throughout the course of the season, and of course your own beloved Leeds United. That's all to come after these.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, the Premier League is back. Watch Crystal Palace versus Arsenal live only on Sky Sports.
The Pat Kenny Show.
I've tried to find something new on the local market, and I've literally exhausted every avenue. Well, I have 3 children, 2 of which have additional needs.
What's plan B if you're being thrown out today?
I really don't know what my plan is. Like, I'm still currently packing up as I speak. The kids are all still in bed, but I really don't know what I'm going to do.
The Pat Kenny Show.
With Matter Private Network.
Weekdays at 9 a.m. on News Talk.
Right, that's it. Just one more bet and I'm done.
I haven't got a problem. Sure, it's only scratch cards. Everyone does it.
It's hard to take that first step and admit you have a gambling problem. At HelpLink, we offer a free gambling addiction service that's available 7 days a week and out of hours. If you or someone you know has been affected by gambling, call HelpLink now on 0818 99 880 or visit helplink.ie.
The Woodies Summer Sale is now on with unmissable offers for your home and garden. We've got up to 50% off garden furniture and barbecues. 3 for 2 mix and match on Dulux interior paint and Cuprinol wood care. And give your home some love with half-price home furniture. But hurry, offers only while stocks last. Shop the way that suits you, in store, online, or with click and collect. Woodies, we're all homemakers. T's and C's and exclusions apply.
Looking for a great value break in Ireland this summer? GoBreaks.ie will find the best hotel deals for you from just €95 per night.
Go Breaks. Eric is a Wi-Fi demon.
My speciality is causing Wi-Fi black spots. Emails from the bathroom, dropped video calls and that kind of thing. And you know, I once made a woman watch an entire box set under the stairs.
But with Virgin Media's Wi-Fi guarantee, eliminating Wi-Fi black spots, Eric finds himself out of a job.
So I'm an influencer now. At least I still get to annoy people.
Get Wi-Fi in every part of every room with Virgin Media's Wi-Fi guarantee. Virgin Media. Bring on amazing.
Subject to availability, the Wi-Fi guarantee service can be added for €5 extra a month and guarantees a minimum speed in every room using our smart Wi-Fi pods. T's and C's apply. See virginmedia.ie/Wi-Fi guarantee.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, the Premier League is back. Watch Everton versus Chelsea on Saturday Night Football. Live, only on Sky Sports.
Yeah, welcome back to the football show. It's Richie here in studio. John Giles is on the line, but we've had another goal at Tallaght Stadium. Shamrock Rovers up against Scuppy in the third qualifying round of the Europa League. Stephen Doyle is at Tallaght Stadium. Stephen?
Yeah, Richie, the goal has gone to the visitors Scuppy. It came in the 77th minute. Just before I tell you about it, because I was kind of thinking, Richie, as this game is going on, Alan Manus had to pull off 6 key saves. I counted 3 in the first half, 3 in the second. You're kind of thinking he's going to have to keep having a good night if they're to keep a clean sheet here this evening. And interestingly enough, in the 62nd minute, he pulled off an absolutely brilliant save when De Silva Ignacio put in an arrowed effort that looked like it was heading for the top corner, but Manus got across brilliantly to pull off an excellent save. But in the 77th minute, the Rovers midfield just opened up. They've made a good few changes there. Richie Tell perhaps guilty maybe of going asleep, and the space opened up for that man again, De Silva Ignacio, and he fired the ball right down the middle of the goal, and Alan Manus put his hand up and he just couldn't stop this one. So that made it 2-1 after 77 minutes, and it's a big sucker punch really for Shamrock Rovers, who had dominated the game in the first half, perhaps guilty of allowing the visitors Scuppy play a bit too much football in front of them in this second half. You kind of felt that there might be a goal coming, but Scuppy with their tails up now. 79 minutes on the clock, Richie. It's Shamrock Rovers 2, Scuppy 1.
Yeah, if there's any further updates from Steve, we'll bring it to you live here on the football show, and we'll get a full time from Tallaght Stadium as well. But as I say, John Giles is on the line with us, previewing the new Premier League season. John, your own Leeds United, they've had a busy summer of comings and goings, perhaps headlined by the goings more than the arrivals, because Kalvin Phillips, as we already mentioned, has gone to Manchester City. Rafinha went for big money to Barcelona this summer as well. They've been the two main outgoings. Jesse Marsh has been busy. He's brought in Luis Sinisterra from Feyenoord for a decent amount of cash. Tyler Adams looks like they're a like-for-like replacement in midfield for Kalvin Phillips, pardon me. And then the likes of Mark Rocca and Brendan Aronson have also come in as well. But Phillips and Rafinha, John, two very, very difficult players to replace, because they've been almost the highlights for Leeds in a pretty turbulent couple of years.
Yeah, I'd be, as an ex-player, I'd be a bit worried about them, to be honest. I mean, it's very, very difficult in football to sell two of your best players for a fair amount of money and try and replace them with players half the price. You know, it's not that easy. I mean, that's why the big clubs are big clubs, because they have the money to buy in the top players. But if you're selling two of your best players for, say, for 100 grand, and then you're getting 2 or 3 players in for much less than 100 grand. I mean, for whoever's doing the scouting for them has to be really, really a miracle man to be able to make that work, in my opinion, Richie.
Yeah, I think Sinisterra is the one who comes in with the biggest question mark, but also the biggest potential, because Feyenoord obviously went deep in Europe in the Conference League last season. He was key to that, seemingly. But in other instances, it looks like Jesse Marsh is going with players with whom he's pretty familiar already, having perhaps worked with them at his previous clubs. Tyler Adams is the one who kind of jumps out in that instance. Rasmus Christensen and Brendan Aronson have both come from the Red Bull franchise. They come from Salzburg, so he wouldn't be unfamiliar with them. So I think he knows what he's working with. I don't think he's going to be
familiar or unfamiliar with them. I mean, what's the most he paid for any of those players?
I think you'd be talking about 20 million, perhaps, something like that, in along those lines. Yeah.
But he's just sold 2 players for 100 million. 29
million for Brendan Aronson. There you go.
Yeah, well, which is a fair price, but it's only half the price that more or less half the price that he's got for the 2 other players. You know, it's very, very difficult to do that at any time, but particularly in this age there, where the best players are the best players and you get the money from them, unless they have a scout there who's really, really top notch, that can see things that other people can't see and replay. But if you're selling 2 of your best players for 100 grand. And you're getting 3 or 4 players in for less than 100 grand. That's miracle working nowadays, Richie. It's miracle working. I mean, what they should be doing, Leeds, if I really wanted them to do well, or should be doing well, is to keep the 2 players they sold and buy in another 3 or 4 players for 70 or 80 or 90 grand. Or million, I should say. Do you know what I mean, Richie?
Yeah.
It's a very, very competitive league, and they only just got away with relegation last season, just about, right? Now, you sell 2 of your players for 100 million, and you buy in 3 or 4 players for less than you got for your players.
The other side of that argument, of course, is Barcelona and Manchester City come looking for you. You're not going to turn them down to stay at Leeds more often than not, with the greatest respect to Leeds United. And similarly, these players like Sinisterra and Tyler Adams and Brendan Aronson, they could end up having a really good season, and suddenly
but you're only guessing at that. If you're going at the price, I can understand what you're saying from the player's point of view, right? The players want to get away, but you don't have to sell them. But if you do sell them for 100 million, then you should be looking to spend that 100 million plus, in my opinion, considering the position Leeds were in last year. They only escaped relegation. You sell 2 of the players and you're buying 4 players in for less than you sold them for. The scouting has to be top notch to do that. I mean, this is a tough game, and it's all about money in that respect. Okay, you had to sell your players. Well, you didn't have to sell them, but they insisted on going, I would imagine, and they got 100 million in. Now you're buying players for less than 100 million. Now, that's miracle stuff nowadays, if you can make that work, and good luck to them.
The thing about that is, as well, is that you could go out and spend like for like. Like, you could go out and find 2 more £50 million players. Chances are those players will be coming in on money that is far in excess what any of your existing squad are on. So you're in danger of upsetting the apple cart there. If you've got somebody coming in on 120,000 a week versus somebody who might be earning, just like your top earner might have just been on 60 or 70, that has the chance to cause.
We don't know what the lads were on. They've sold out.
But just presuming that somebody comes in on big money, they're going to be earning big money as well.
Well, if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. I mean, I think that they didn't have to sell the midfield player.
Phillips and Rafinha, yeah.
Or just either of them. I mean, you can always say, no, you're not going. Now, it's very difficult to do so. But I mean, the other lad was the midfield lads, the Leeds lad,
Phillips.
I mean, I'd say he wasn't mad to be sold. I mean, he's a local lad. He seemed to be happy there, and they could pay him more money if they wanted to pay him. In other words, you do the best you possibly can, Richie, not to sell your best players. And if you're going to sell the best players, whatever you have to do, whether you pay more or not, you have to do it. You just have to get the players in, or else you're going to be in a relegation battle next year again. I'd be surprised if Leeds are not in a relegation battle again this year.
Do you think they could struggle?
Definitely.
Yeah. Who else do you reckon is going to be in and around that kind of mix? The 3 teams that came up now, we've got Fulham came up as championship champions, as it were. Bournemouth finished second, then in Forest back in the Premier League after 20 odd years, coming up through the playoffs.
Well, Forest seem to be making an effort to buy players in. The other 2 clubs, I think their policy would be, if we have to go down again, we'll go down again. In other words, they're not going to get themselves into trouble paying out a lot of money. I mean, Norwich have done it. They've done it twice now, haven't they? They went down
twice or 3 times, I think,
went
this
down,
stage,
back up again now. You know, that's their policy. Notts Forest seem to be making a bigger effort to get players in and paying more money so as they can stay up.
Is that a dangerous thing, like setting aside the individuals involved, because obviously we'd be here for the rest of the night if we were to list everybody Forest have signed this summer. If you've come up and been a really well managed, well coached side, and suddenly you have an influx of 11, 12 players in the summer, is that a dangerous gamble to kind of take, because it's trying to integrate a lot of new people into a system that had been ticking along really nicely with the players you did have?
Well, Norwich have done that, but they don't have to buy 10, 11 players. You know, they must have some good players. Say you buy 3 or 4 players, good players. so as you can stay up. But I think the policy at Norwich particularly, and Fulham, because Fulham have been up and down, is that they're not going to take a gamble on spending more money.
Yeah.
I think Norwich are family owned, you know, and they seem to have that policy. Okay, if we go down, because don't forget now, if you go down, Richie, you get, 40 or 50 million
in parachute payments. Yeah,
parachute payments. So they're not going to get themselves into financial trouble. And Fulham seems to be the same. I don't see Fulham buying many players. So if they have to go down, right, they get the parachute money with a chance to go back up again.
Yeah,
you know, it makes sense in many ways, because if it's your money, Richie, you know, and they can't afford to be buying a lot of players and still go down, because you're going to be stuck with those players in when you go down again
in the Championship. Yeah, I've kind of seen teams that have suffered because of that as well.
Exactly. You know, like at Notts Forest, they seem to be, they're spending money now, so they're taking a gamble on it to stay up. But if the gamble doesn't work and they go down, they're in big trouble.
Yeah, and our football and off the ball is brought to you by Sky. Watch every live Premier League game this season on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. It all starts tomorrow night with Crystal Palace against Arsenal. So just to wrap it up, John, you're back in Liverpool as champions, and I think Leeds to be in a bit of mither by the end of the season.
Well, I hope not, but if they're doing business the way they're doing business, it could happen. And I don't fancy a really successful season for Chelsea either this year. I think there's a bit of bother going there. They have new owners. One of the owners seems to be very involved in the transfers and that. And Tuchel, Thomas Tuchel, he's done a great job, but things have gone really bad there. And I can imagine him getting impatient and not hanging around there.
Okay, John, we will look forward to your thoughts on the opening round of games, which are obviously going to come thick and fast this coming weekend. But and obviously we'll get back to your manager series as well, which you were in the midst of with Nathan. When Nathan's back in the hot seat, I think we'll get to the great Jock Steen with yourself and himself. But for now, John Giles, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Richie.
There you go. There's John Giles. And as I say, it all gets underway tomorrow night with Crystal Palace against Arsenal. Scuppi are down to 10 men at home away to Shamrock Rovers, indeed. Tallaght Stadium, the venue for that one. We'll get an update from Stephen Doyle at full time, but it was 6 minutes to go when Walid Hamidi was dismissed for the North Macedonian champions. They are 2-1 down and down to 10 men. Shamrock Rovers leading by 2-1. Steve-O's there. We'll get a full-time wrap from him as well in the next while. We'll keep an eye as well on the game at Tannadice, because Jamie McGrath, the Republic of Ireland midfielder, is on for his debut. Came on just before the hour mark for Dundee United, and shortly thereafter he provided the assist for their opener. So Dundee United leading AZ of Alkmaar from the Netherlands, of course, by 1-0. That goal for Dundee United coming from Glenn Middleton, and it was Jamie McGrath on debut, as they say, who provided the assist. We'll have more after these.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, the Premier League is back. Watch Crystal Palace versus Arsenal live only on Sky Sports.